That is a Ford Puma. It's a light SUV in this emerging category that is smaller than your traditional small SUV. Little as it may be, it has big hopes riding on its shoulders to go with its big cat name, because Ford is hoping it'll be one of those cars that helps break its image of just being the Ranger and Mustang brand. The one we're looking at today is in mid-grade ST-Line guise, and we're going to see if it has the mojo to take your eyes away from an ever-expanding field of competitors. Before we do, remember you'll be able to read the full written review and others like it over on carsguide.com.au. And if you're enjoying our reviews on YouTube, remember to hit those like, subscribe and bell notification icons to stay up to date with all of our latest content. If there's a specific section you're looking for, we'll throw the chapter markers up on screen now. And if you're watching on YouTube, they'll be in the description below too. First things first, the Puma looks great, at least I think it does. It has a new approach to design out of Ford's European operation that's really eye-grabbing. It has a distinctive face with a big grille and contoured lights that run up the edges of the bonnet and into its swoopy side profile. Round the back, it has an almost coupe-like roofline, more distinctive light clusters, an increasingly common use of text across the boot lid, and a little spoiler that flicks out in reference to other sporty European Ford products. You could call this SUV's design risky given its loud look compared to more conservative options, but there isn't really a rulebook for light SUVs yet, which has led to some really interesting takes from different brands. Unlike Mazda or even Kia, Ford doesn't go with a strong design language across its entire Australian lineup, but each of its popular products really stand on their own. The Mustang represents Ford America, the Ranger represents Ford's Southeast Asian operation, while the Puma and Escape are the new face of Ford Europe. The Puma essentially replaces the Fiesta hatch in Australia, but its interior follows the same, more conservative approach, especially to its colour palette and design compared to its outlandish exterior look. We'll take a closer look in the practicality section of this review, but highlights include the big crisp multimedia screen and its digital dash cluster. How much does a Ford Puma ST-Line cost? Well, at the time of shooting this video, it was a little over $30,000, and that places it against rivals like Mazda's CX-3 S Touring, Honda's HR-V RS, and the new Kia Stonic GT line. We also put a base version of this car in a comparison test recently against the Skoda Kamiq and Toyota Yaris Cross, so if you want to see how it did, make sure to check that out. The ST-Line we're looking at today sits above the base car, simply called the Puma, and the top spec, somewhat confusingly called the ST-Line V. Standard across all Puma grades is an 8-inch multimedia touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, digital radio, wireless phone charger, and a leather-bound steering wheel. It also has a 180-degree reversing camera. On the outside, standard stuff includes LED headlights and taillights. But where does the ST-Line differ from the base car? It gets its own set of 17-inch alloy wheels, a sportier body kit with the aforementioned spoiler sticking out the back, and an even more aggressive suspension tune. It ditches the base model's average analog dial cluster in favour of a 12.3-inch digital setup. It adds paddle shifters and a flat bottom to the wheel, as well as alloy pedals, and spreads red stitching throughout the cabin. Our car was also optioned with the panoramic opening sunroof and the rather good-looking Desert Island Blue premium paint. Now, one thing that it's annoying that the Puma doesn't get is keyless entry. It's a feature that many cars at this price do have, and it's just one of those little convenience things that would be simple to add that adds so much to it. You know, when you're coming up to a car with pets or kids or shopping, it just makes it easy to not have to go and fumble for your key. Now, the Puma shares its underpinnings with the Fiesta hatch, and it's in the front seat here where you can really tell that this car is based on a small car. It's just really tight and narrow in here, and all this equipment is really in your face. It doesn't do it any favors for the size of the cabin. There are a lot of things in here that I do like though. This sporty steering wheel with the squidgy leather is really nice to hold. The ST-Line mixes it up with a bit of carbon trim. The push start's cool. The ST-Line also gets this digital dash cluster, which is much better than the dreary one in the base car. And the multimedia touchscreen is nice and sharp and has a good brightness and clarity to it as well. Another negative in here, even though this is a mid-grade car, you don't get climate control, it is just air conditioning. And these seats, they are more bolstered than the seats in the base car, but not by much. They're still pretty ordinary, even compared to some of its competitors. Connectivity-wise, you do get a wireless phone charging bay in this little slot here, which is pretty cool. There's a 12-volt outlet, a USB port, although it doesn't have a cover, so I feel like it's just going to get dust and debris in there. And there's also a USB-C hidden in this rather deep console box here. Storage areas for front passengers include bottle holders in the center console and 2 bottle holders in large trenches in the doors. Let's go have a look in the back seat. Now, the back seat of the Puma isn't the worst light SUV back seat we've been in, but it's not the best either. As you can see, I'm behind my own 182 centimeter tall seating position, and I do have a little bit of room for my knees, but unfortunately, not that much room for my head. It's actually hard up against the roof here. And I think that's partially to do with this car's coupé roofline, but also this optional sunroof probably eats a little bit of space as well. The seat trim here continues and it's okay. You get some flimsy little nets on the backs of the seats, but importantly, there is padding for your elbow, which is really nice to see. But you do get no adjustable air vents in the back, and there's no power outlet either, with just a little storage bay there. Boot space in the Puma is competitive for the class at 410 litres, but the loading lip is quite high, so heavier objects might be more of a challenge to put in than they should be. To make full use of the space, you do need to remove the Puma's floor, which reveals a large underfloor area beneath. There's also a space saver spare stored under there as well. As you can see, with the floor removed, we can quite easily fit our full set of CarsGuide demo cases. Finally, the powered tailgate from the top spec ST-Line V can be optioned at a reasonable cost. There's just one engine across all 3 variants in the Puma's range. It's this little 1-litre 3-cylinder turbo engine. It actually has surprisingly good outputs, and in typically European fashion, it's mated to a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic. The Puma range is front drive only, unlike some rivals, so keep that in mind too. So there's a few things you're probably going to want to get used to from behind the wheel of the Ford Puma as you're driving it, especially if you're coming out of a hatchback or a sedan. And the main one is that SUV feeling. You really notice that in here. You're sitting really tall, and as I said before, the Puma feels narrow because those A-pillars come in really quite sharply. And that also conspires with this tall dash line and makes it a little tricky to see over the front of the car, but it does give you a pretty commanding view of the road. The next thing I notice about the Puma is the steering is really direct and almost twitchy in its character, and that was a little off-putting at first, but actually it's not too bad, as we'll talk about in a second. The ride is really well done as well. This ST-Line gets a different tune from the base car. It's a sportier suspension tune, it's a bit firmer, it's a bit harsher, but it's still not the harshest we've driven in this class, and it is really well balanced over the 2 axles, which is quite nice. If you do want a bit of that softer ride, a little bit more comfort, you can pick the base car, which doesn't lose too much in terms of its spec, but it is a little bit quieter, it is a little bit more compliant over rough roads, and that's just worth noting as well. This 3-cylinder engine has a great amount of power for a car in this class. It's even really engaging too. There's a little bit of turbo lag to wrestle with, but that almost makes it fun. That extra power is backed by this gruff 3-cylinder tone that this car has, and that's a little bit surprising, and it actually adds a lot behind the wheel too. Dual clutch autos can be a bit of a red flag for some people. They can have some negative characteristics in traffic. They can be a little glitchy, they can have a little delay on them to catch. But in the case of the Puma, it's actually really good. There's not too much of that in traffic. It is a little bit noticeable, but it's still preferable to that rubbery CVT feeling that many of its rivals have. And despite that twitchy steering and how it feels like you're sitting high and over the front axle, I was really surprised to feel how confident this car is in the corners. It's preferable to many of its rivals in that way, and we even took the base model on a bit of a corner carving road as well, and both of them are really competent, really fun to drive in those situations. And that driving prowess is really rare for this segment, and one of this car's main advantages over its rivals. It still does have that SUV-like quality, so it doesn't feel quite as much of a hatchback as something like the Skoda Kamiq. But still, it's got really good driving qualities, and if you enjoy getting behind the wheel, well, this might be a small SUV for you. Now, Ford does quote an ambitiously low official combined fuel consumption number for this car, and we did overshoot that by a little bit on our test. It's not the worst in the segment, and I'm sure you can do better if you drove this car over a longer period of time. We've only had it for a week. Now keep in mind, this car's little turbocharged engine does need that mid-grade 95 octane petrol, not the base 91. And it does also have a bit of a small fuel tank, so keep that in mind too. On the safety front, the Puma does well and has a 5-star ANCAP safety rating to the 2019 standards. And involved in that is auto emergency braking with pedestrian detection, lane departure warning with lane keep assist, traffic sign recognition, and an emergency SOS function. It also has a complement of 6 airbags, but if it were my Puma, I'd really want the oddly named Park Pack. It's less about parking and more about the fact that it adds adaptive cruise control and blind spot monitoring to this car's safety suite. The front parking sensors are just a bonus. Like many of its rivals, the Ford Puma is covered by a 5-year and unlimited kilometre warranty. You'll need to service the Puma once a year or every 15,000 kilometres, and the first 4 services, if you go with Ford Genuine, are capped at $299. Number 5 service does take a jump to $320, and it does get a little more expensive from there. The service calculator goes out to 12 years. It's not the cheapest we've seen, but it's really not bad either. Ford has also tried to make the whole service program a bit more palatable by offering a free loan car or pick-up and drop-off service, and they'll top up your roadside assist every year with each visit as well. So there you have it, the Ford Puma ST-Line. Ford really needed to get this one right, and I think they've done a great job. It's competitive across the board, and it's even pretty well priced too, even though you probably want to tick an option box or two. Where I think it really sets itself apart though is that it's fun. It looks fun, and it's great to drive behind the wheel as well. And while it's not the biggest on the inside and it's not the most efficient, it'll really win that buyer who wants something a little bit more behind the wheel. What do you think? Would you pick the Ford Puma over its rivals? Tell us what you think in the comments below. And if you are watching on YouTube, remember to hit those like, subscribe, and bell notification icons if you enjoyed this video, and go read the full review over on carsguide.com.au.